Hello! Live from Rockstar HQ. What we should really do, before we go any further, is we should really put a little bit of Cornforth art up there as well, shouldn't we?
Look at that.
Shouldn't we put a little bit of Sarah's art on the shelf?
That's very exciting, isn't it?
Good morning!
Morning!
How is everyone? How the devil are you this morning? Come in and say hi. Let me know if you're joining us live. I don't know if any notifications are going out again. They seem to come back yesterday and then have disappeared again.
They do.
Who knows? Come on in and say hi. Let us know that you're here. I'm joined. Look, in real life, I can actually touch her. We're not a split screen.
Hello, here, look.
I can touch her in real life, so to speak. Lovely Sarah Cornforth. And we're popping in to talk about all sorts. And you're together in real life, yes, Paula. Yes, we are. Look at this. Look, I can touch you. I can touch you.
I can touch the beautiful blue hair.
The blue hair.
It feels as blue as it looks.
It feels blue.
It
feels blue. If you've missed it, 4 Candles has just gone on the timeline as well, just a minute ago. So you might want to go and pick your candle, but you won't want to do it until afterwards. So, hello.
Hello. Hi.
Welcome. It is Friday and Sarah is coming to join us to talk about spiritual business and to talk about the growth of your spiritual business and how that has kind of come about and how you've got to where you are right now and what kind of tests and trials and tribulations have gone on along the way. So, Sarah, if you don't know, I'm sure most people who are in the comments who have joined us know Sarah. But if you don't know Sarah, she is the magical creatrix. This is her art. Look how lovely.
In a frame, Emma got it beautifully framed.
Look how lovely she is.
Love it.
Thank you. Gorgeous stuff. Yay. And we're talking about where it all began. Where did it all begin?
Well, it began with a blue-haired lady very close to me who went, "Hold on, missus, why aren't you selling art?" And I was just like, "What are you on about?" So
I'm not an artist. I'm not very good at art. I can't do art.
That was how that began. So I kind of got, she sort of dropped the idea in my head for a little while and let me mull it over, because over the years Emma has worked out exactly how to deal with me. You drip feed information until I believe that I came up with it. It's how you deal with men as well, isn't it?
Yeah. You are pretty much the same person as my husband.
Yes. So
as long as I've convinced you it was your idea, then we've done it.
Then I'm like, well, hey, look at this, I've got this great idea. She's gone, really?
Really? Really? You think you can do that?
So that's kind of where it happened. And that was just from, I was using arts and crafts as a way to chill out a bit and to relax. So I had insomnia and I was kind of suffering a bit with it and I needed to wind down. I found working for my VA clients was always in my brain and I was always quite sort of on a high level of energy. Yeah.
Turned on.
So switching off was, we're swapping knees.
Swapping knees.
After she covered me in fur. So because of that, arts and craft actually sort of calmed me down. It helped me focus. It helped me slow my brain a bit. It helped me sleep. I had no idea that it could be something that was saleable, for sure. It was never meant for that at the start. And it was only when Emma saw a few things that I'd done, she said, "Hold on a minute, why aren't you doing this as a business? You could sell this." So I was just like, no, I'm not an artist. And it kind of just sort of with little prompts of, I think you should set up a Facebook page. Just try that
just for fun.
Yeah.
Just for fun. I think that you should just have a bit of an outlet for this, was where I started.
It was just a bit of a hobby, just get yourself out there a little bit. It's like, oh, okay, yeah. And eventually I started putting more energy into the Magical Creatrix, less into the Productivity Princess. And I was realising that the Magical Creatrix made me really happy, really calm, and felt like right, and I just wanted to migrate more and more in that direction. So it was a gigantic big nudge from Emma, cleverly disguised as my own decision.
Really good at that.
So, yeah. So thank you. I'm so pleased you did it.
Pleasure. Between me and Andrea,
we've
kicked you in the right direction.
Absolutely.
I think.
Yes.
So how did that changeover feel? Was there, as a spiritual business, there always feels like there's an increased level of vulnerability to what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think that this applies to lots of people who are putting their heart and soul into what they do in whatever way that shows up. So how did you feel that, and how did you get over that?
Initially, it was the transition that was uncomfortable, because I was leaving behind something I'd put a huge amount of work into. I was behind the brand, I was behind the business, even though it wasn't where my full heart and soul was, which I didn't know until I moved over. So that transition of leaving something felt a little bit like a failure at first. It also felt like a divorce. It felt like you were grieving. You know, it's all of those sorts of end of significant moment feelings, isn't it?
Yeah.
So to get into the Magickal Creatrix side and to feel that little bit more vulnerable for a moment actually helped, because it was more me.
Yeah.
I was pushing at the productivity princess. I was trying to be what productivity was supposed to be, and productivity for me had become a tool to help me cope with trauma that I'd had in my life, and the fact that I suffered from insomnia. So it was a coping mechanism which I was then able to teach other people, but I didn't need it anymore. And it was only you that had noticed that one as well, well before I did. So now it became something that I used to create sets of rules and confine myself with and limit myself with instead. So actually the transition became freeing, and that vulnerability was actually a pleasure. It wasn't as uncomfortable as I expected. Much easier than I anticipated, in fact.
I think that's a really interesting point that you pick up on, is the point of trauma. And I think that for lots of people, I talk about this a lot when I talk about the memo and life giving you that real kick up the arse in whatever way, shape or form that comes about for you. And the ways that we initially cope with that, and the strategies that we use to cope with that. And you used a very organised, I've got everything together, I'm very rigid and nothing can touch me.
Yeah.
And I used a very, you can't stop me.
Yeah.
I am not going to be stopped. I will do this. You won't tell me that you've been so poorly and just give yourself a break. And so it's funny how those different coping mechanisms, one kick in immediately, the ones that kick in autopilot, and then how you dissect those as the years pass to actually integrate them into your personality, and the ones that are good for you and the ones that aren't so good for you. You know, my I'll do it, you won't stop me can become a level of stubbornness.
Yeah. No, Emma's not stubborn or impatient.
Yeah, a level of impatience, a level of very high self-expectation, and you know, your rigidity was kind of a bit of a character and a persona, wasn't it? It was, well, this is who I am, and therefore, you know, nobody can touch me or stop me or get into anything. Really, really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I had created an alter ego and all sort of expressions of it, really. Yeah.
Money.
Bless her. Yeah, so it's kind of I sort of had to, I think, because that was my way of protecting myself, and because I had to go through so many years of looking after myself in that way, my normal became a very, very different place. And then after a while, you turn around and you've got no idea what your original normal ever used to look like. What you used to be interested in, what you would normally have laughed at, what you would have found fun back in the day before you decided to build a fortress around yourself that was completely impenetrable. So
and we talked about this quite a lot on car journeys, didn't we, where
when she's got me trapped in a car.
One, I've got her trapped in a car, and two, it doesn't feel like it's got the same level of I think the same level of impact, because you don't then have to look the other person. You can have a little bit more of a generic conversation, and we unpicked some of the things that that went back in time, and that, you know, that had contributed to certain elements of what you were doing, and that was super interesting for me. But it was also very much that self exploration for you. And I think that for lots of people who are spiritual entrepreneurs, they're sharing an awful lot of this self-exploration. Now, you would have never sat down with me and used the word trauma, self-exploration, anything that might deem you to not have all of your shit together.
Yeah, that's right.
9 months ago.
No.
You would not have had this conversation with me. You would have come off this and gone, I'm not answering those questions. You can't make me. I'm here and what have you. Yeah. How do you think that that's changed? How do you think that that process of being able to self-accept and develop has come around?
Because I'd done every step of healing except for the last step, which was then to be open and honest and allow people to then accept me for who is standing right in front of them right now. And that was the last bit. And that's the bit that I'd sort of resisted for such a long time. And you can't completely heal or even begin to go on that path until you've gone through, it's like your 12 steps of anything, I think, you know, and that was my final bit. So only when we started to unpick and being surrounded by so many other spiritual business owners in the circle that sort of I was part of through yourself, and having them kind of in my news feed a lot, made opening up and being honest easier to do because I was watching other people doing it. I realised that part of my spiritual journey, which at this point I knew was essential to me moving, needed me to be open and honest about everything that had gone on. And I just needed to be braver. And, you know, not a single bad thing happened from doing so. Not one. Not one. Yeah, still here. Nothing exploded.
Who knew?
That's it. Who knew? Yeah.
Who knew? So when did the switch over into, right, I'm bloody embracing this, it's ready, it's right? When did that happen? Because it happened in a way that your previous self wouldn't have accepted.
Oh no. Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, kind of beginning of the year was quite significant, but I think this year for everybody has been a bit of a stall, hasn't it? It's been a slow stall, so it felt really like trying to get through treacle at the beginning of it, even though I knew that's where I wanted to be, but that was quite hard. And I would say the past 2 months have been a massive significance where I've not been even referring myself to the productivity princess anymore. I do only refer to myself as the Magickal Creatrix. But it was kind of, I resisted a little, but it was because I still had little episodes of healing to do as I kind of released those bits. And the more I went into it, the more I embraced it, the happier I was. And then it was when feedback started to come through. That was the big difference. I couldn't believe it.
But what I love about the beginning of this journey was when she goes to it, she goes, I've got notifications. People are talking to me.
Yeah. I sent her a message saying, I never thought I'd say this in my life, but I can't keep up with my Facebook notifications. I was like, blimey, and I love it. I absolutely love it. I get excited to open my page and reply to some of the comments that have been left while I'm sleeping, you know, and that's great. I didn't have that feeling before, and it's fantastic, you know, and it's people sharing their stories with me that have been similar. That's really interesting. People telling me that when they've seen some of my art, it's inspired them, it's made them want to get more creative themselves, and then telling me afterwards how they felt about that. And I just think that's brilliant because that has been my whole self-healing process, and that is basically what you're seeing. You're seeing me heal publicly, and that's exactly what I'm doing. And you know what, it doesn't feel wrong or weird or anything. It feels like the only way I could do it. And I think I always knew through some of the stuff that I'd been through in my life that there was going to be a point where I should be directly helping people who'd either been through similar experiences or just people who had maybe shut themselves away and found it very, very difficult. In whatever form that would be, but I couldn't see myself as being like a counsellor or anything like that because it was a little bit too formal. So this feels like my way has just kind of opened up for me, because it wasn't until I got into this that I realised the impact of what I could actually have by growing spiritually, by growing creatively. I'm actually showing other people how to do the same. Yeah, and wow, isn't that amazing?
So let's have a look. Jenny says, I think that we get in our heads that we can't help others unless we are seen to have our shit together, and being vulnerable will put people off. I think that the very interesting thing, I've written about having your shit together an awful lot because I've just finished editing a book that Vicky started to do the design work on today. But I think that the reality is that nobody's got their shit together. And I often talk about mess to message. And actually, you can share your mess, but it can't really and truly become your message until you're over the hump. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that any of us have our shit together.
No, absolutely not. And I don't want my shit together. It would just be weird.
Yeah. Well, some days, you know, we're all completely rocking it. Other days, not so much so.
Yeah.
Other days, we're looking for our phone and keys that are in our hands. And that's okay.
Are you trying to get out of a car with seatbelts still on?
Yeah. I'm trying to get out of the car with seatbelts still on. Paula says, I'm getting back into my creative mindset thanks to Sarah. I think we're all creative. I think that actually the reality is that people are frightened of being creative. And you were frightened of art.
Yes, I was. Terrified.
Frightened of art, right? And actually, we don't have to, I remember this, I've got no formal training, I'm not as good as so-and-so,
You remember too much.
And, you know, I think that I'm not creative like that, but my creativity comes through words.
Yeah.
But I think that everybody has got the ability to be creative. And I think that I could probably be visually creative in that kind of sense if I had the patience and interest. And I think that some other people would probably be much better off wordily creative if they had the patience and interest.
Absolutely.
I think it's all about where your patience and interest lies. But it's awesome, Paula, that you're getting into that creative place. And we'd love to see some of it, wouldn't we?
I've seen some good. Yeah, she's good.
Ooh.
Yes.
Your readings are amazing and your artwork is something else, says Emjo. Oh, let's love up Sarah, everyone.
Thank you. I'll be blushing in a minute.
You're making me choke. Becky says, morning, good morning. Karen says, Sarah inspires me so much to know that I could change direction completely with my career path.
Wow, that's amazing, Karen. I love watching what you're doing right now. It's great.
It is.
It's absolutely brilliant.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Jackie said, I found that people actually find comfort and open up more if they know you've been through the same stuff. 34 years in mental health taught me that people, regardless of how they feel, want their and what their illness is, appreciate empathy. Totally. And I think that it's really important that when you are reaching out to help and support people, that you're not coming down from your ivory tower.
Yeah.
You know, I see this a lot, and I've had a real big rant this morning. I haven't told you about this when you arrived. I've had a real big rant this morning with Team Rockstars because I'm getting a little bit sick of the industry, the fakery, the copying, the empty promises, the placebo effects, the come and I'll help you sort your crap out in 3.6 seconds and you'll make a gazillion pounds. And I go through this phase really regularly, and I'm going to come back and rant about that later because it's not for now. But I think that absolutely having the ability to reach out to somebody and be able to say, do you know, I might not have been through exactly what you've been through, but I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. And my life experiences have taken me down a path where there's been loads of different experiences, as you have.
Yeah.
You know, there's been things that have gone wrong. There's been people who haven't been well in my world. There's been me not being well in my world. I nearly failed to live.
So glad that didn't happen.
That would have been a big fail, wouldn't it?
Yes,
As fails go, that's quite magnificent. But I think that having that ability to actually look at different circumstances and go, right, I haven't been exactly where you've been, but these are my life experiences that might equate and relate. And I think that gives us the ability to connect on a much deeper level with people than I once read in a textbook that this is how we deal with this sort of thing. And actually, you know, being able to reach out a hand and even if it's just, I hear you, I feel you, that's, you know, it's really powerful.
It is, massively.
Claire says, I've loved seeing you change, considering we met when we were at our first stages as VAs some 4 odd years ago. I got her at the very first stage at a networking meeting.
Yeah.
And boy, was she corporate. And your career has completely changed. and you beam now big time. Yeah, she's actually palpably different. If you look at the photographs of Sarah, right, this is a real funny one. If you look at the photographs of Sarah, the only old photographs that have got real Sarah in it is the photo shoot we did together. Yeah. Because I took the rod out of your bottom before we did that.
Yes. For the first or last time.
But, you know, when sometimes I see your pictures, your selfies and things on Instagram, and in the most positive sense of this word, you look really wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not meaning that like
I've gone feral.
Yeah. But like in that really interesting kind of way. And I look at them pictures and I think, ooh.
Yeah. There's like a fire's been lit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I've looked at a couple and I've had to look at them. You know, when you look at your own selfies, you're like thinking, okay, this is a bit weird, but what the hell is going on with that face? It's like there's something in there.
Well, Claire says you literally shine and you can tell that you love what you do. And she does.
Thank you.
So what do you think is important about loving what you do?
It's finding that connection. So for me, I've realised that spiritual development goes hand in hand with my creativity. I need one to support the other and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to do both. And it's by being surrounded by amazing business owners, Andrea, the work that you've been doing in Spooky School, Trudy, and, you know, all the other sort of spiritual, Kate, Spencer, you know, all of this sort of stuff, being surrounded by the sort of spiritual side of things made me realise that when I was intrigued by this when I was younger, and I let it all go to sort of fit in a little bit more and not be the weird kid, because I was already ginger, you know, I was already on the back foot.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of, as that became part of my life again, it opened up creativity.
Mm-hmm.
The more I get into my spiritual side of things, the more I'm working with tarot, the more I'm looking into sort of anything else. I'm loving ancient aliens and all sorts of things right now. The more
she can be very bizarre.
I am, yeah.
She can send me some of the most amazing messages ever about weird things that have happened and dreams that have happened.
Love weird stuff. But that makes more imagination for me. It opens up my imagination.
Mm-hmm.
It relaxes my mind. It lets me see the potential of possibilities.
Yeah.
And that is then coming out in the creative things that I'm doing right now. And I can definitely see the sort of theme. You know, I flicked through some of the photographs that I've put on Instagram, for example, and I can see how it's developing. I can see it's and just comments from people as well saying there's a very pagan vibe to that, and I can see it's kind of going in that direction. I feel as though it's getting into some sort of Celtic roots somewhere, and I'm just allowing it to come from heart and what I'm absolutely fascinated with right now. So whatever vibe that kind of has. Could be anything. That's it. Could literally be anything. But that's, I think, going with the feeling rather than making logical decisions, which is how I used to work, is a really big difference.
Yes.
Has that answered the question?
I think so. What I found really interesting there is about inspiration and being inspired and the things that inspire you. And it might be things that you're reading, it might be things that you're looking into, it might be things that you're researching, it might be tools that you've got around you. And as we look here, we have, well, that's my altar up there kind of thing that's got a gazillion crystals up there. It's got some gorgeous goddesses up there. It's got, what's it got up there?
We've got some amazing
candles,
up there,
all sorts up there, pyramids,
candles, little bottles of things,
manifestation
oils.
box,
shiny stuff.
She might end up taking things home.
But
you know, you're inspired by the stuff that you're seeing and learning. And I met with an old corporate connection this week.
Right.
A bloke who's a financial advisor. You know, it sounds really still, really boring, but it's a bloke that I worked with a lot when I was in the corporate world. And he's not what a financial advisor would be. He's got a very different vibe going on, and he's grown a really huge business over on Teesside. And I find that I have the most... I know that you say that my brain works in very different ways, but I get really inspired by conversations. Yeah. Little words that people say, little phrases that they put together. And the one that inspired me from the conversation that I had with him was, I strive to be better. Every year I strive to be better, and that doesn't necessarily mean that we make more profit. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's bigger turnover. That doesn't necessarily mean that we've got more staff. It might be self-development, it might be health, it might be well-being, it might be... And it was really interesting to hear that word better. And the other really interesting one that he said, and I'm a little bit of we call them the neons in this house, but a little bit of a Formula One junkie.
Oh, right, yes, okay.
And they go, neon.
Yeah.
So the kids have always called them the neons. But he was talking about business in the terms of, you're looking for that 0.5%.
Yeah.
He's looking for the difference in a 0.5%. And it's just really interesting how these conversations then take a path into other inspiration and things that actually I find intriguing. I find humans intriguing, and you find nature and history and all of that kind of stuff. So it's about taking your inspiration from where works for you. What gets your brain firing? What is it that makes you go pew 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 pew? Which is very, very interesting.
It is, because it's stimulating it, isn't it? So any of that information stimulates everything in my brain, opens up my imagination to something extra, and then what happens when pen goes to paper is then, well, anything could happen, and it's great. I love that.
Claire says, but then you have changed massively too. I've been following you for nearly about the same amount of time too. Claire and I didn't even know that Emma was woo-woo when I first started following her. I'm just a little bit mad. Yvonne says, completely agree. Linda says, I think that you're one of my druid tribe. Jenny says, I know I've definitely changed and off on a scary adventure that started because of Emma. Brilliant. Do I send people off on scary adventures?
Yes.
Is that how it happens?
Yeah.
Oh. So, what would be your big business tips? Because I know that for spiritual people, there is this fear that you've got your spirituality and it's personal and it's nurturing and it's loving. And there's this fear that if you take this into something else, that actually you'll end up hating what you used to use as a love.
Yeah. Because
you had this.
Yeah.
This is what I used to calm down and relax. And what if I take this and create something that actually leaves me with nothing? It leaves me without my outlet. It leaves me hating the things that I've been doing. How do you cope with that one to start with?
The big thing is, don't exhaust what you've got. Don't just stay on one tiny little thing. There is an unlimited number of things I could be reading about, researching about, techniques I could be drawing with, different things I could be doing art for. I'm absolutely unlimited with where I can go with it. So, if I kind of turned myself into a factory production line and churned out the same repeated painting every single day, I'm certainly going to get really sick, and it's the same for anything with spiritual businesses. If every single day you're turning up and you're dishing out tarot card readings and you're starting to hate it because it's becoming laborious, it needs to be mixed up with something else. So I think balance and kind of a big scope of different things that you can do is really, really essential, because then you enjoy what you share. It becomes, you're excited about this because it's something new, it's something interesting every single time. But if you start to repeat and make it monotonous, so it becomes a task, it becomes a chore, it becomes a job, then you do lose that essence, and that spiritual side of it doesn't come through. So it's got to be done from the heart. That's absolutely essential. I know that kind of gets bandied around a lot, how are you doing something from the heart? But you've got to sort of, there's times where I think, right, this afternoon, for example, when I go back, I'm drawing an owl, right? I've got the pencil drawings down and I'm drawing an owl.
Yeah, I've seen it.
I'm going to be doing the extra bits of that. And you know what? I'm really excited. I can't wait to fill his wings in. That's all I think about. I'm so excited about the idea of that. That's the sensation that I didn't have when I was thinking about, right, I need to organise 200 spreadsheets for this, that and the other.
And you bloody loved a spreadsheet.
I did love a spreadsheet, yeah.
Who knew?
Yeah, who knew? Who knew? But it didn't kind of make my your heart skip a little beat. When you're excited about going somewhere, you've maybe got Holmes towers on the scope of something and you're like, oh, brilliant, it's exciting.
Yeah.
The idea of going back and just going, oh, brilliant, I'm going to do the owl's wings this afternoon. That's really exciting. And it's just a tiny little thing like that. Sharing those pictures as I'm doing it, because people really love to see my process as I'm going along. So I think just check in. Have you turned it into a chore? Because we're all capable of doing that. If you've turned it into a chore, that's nothing to do with the way that spiritual business is being received or how spiritual businesses should be. That's what you've turned it into. So, you have a choice in whether or not it's going to be laborious, boring, whether you're going to feel like you're selling your soul and losing your spirituality and all of that kind of stuff.
You can create a beast in any way, can't you? I think that's the thing to know. I want that owl soul, says Jenny.
I'm Excellent, Jenny.
And I think, what would your top tips be about how to integrate that passion and love into it being a business?
I think use the tools that you've already got from running a business. That was the beneficial part for me. I've been online as a business owner for a few years now. So what I've done is I've taken all of that stuff that I don't need to relearn, I don't need to reteach myself, I don't need to sit down and kind of do all the boring stuff, because I've been there and done that. Now do it with love, passion, spontaneity, all of the things I was completely incapable of. I know, it's a new one. I added that one in last week.
She would have never been spontaneous.
God, no. I would have had to schedule in spontaneity.
Yeah. 4:36 on a Tuesday. That's when we're going to be spontaneous.
Exactly. That's it.
Yeah.
So, and I've realised that for me, my business, I think as somebody who's spiritual or somebody who's creative or both, and I think that they both come in hand anyway, what you do throughout the course of your day is what people are interested in, because you are your business. Your spiritual practice, your creative practice is your business. It's what people want to see. So actually, you don't need to sit down and think about the next month's social media post, because everything that you have got that people want to see about you, you're about to do in the next 24 hours. And that's what I've noticed. And that's why it's actually spontaneity just happened one day for me. It was just like, whoa, this is nice. And doesn't it make things easy? And don't stretch yourself too thin either. I picked 2 platforms to work with when it came to social media. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. They work brilliantly for my business type. I may go elsewhere in the future, but I'm certainly in no rush to, because I'm, being the master of 2 rather than just being shit at all of them is, but my fear with the Productivity Princess, because I was on all of the platforms, was that if I left one of them, what if I don't get that bit of business? But I wasn't getting it anyway because I was stretched too thin. But there's a whole kind of thing in your brain that's just going, if I leave Twitter, even though I hate it, and I can't stand people who tweet, not everybody, but just Twitter was really frustrating to me. Because it's 140 characters. I know it's different.
Doubled now.
I know.
It's doubled now.
But I feel it's nice to be off that, because I think if you're forcing yourself to be somewhere you don't enjoy, that becomes a chore, and that's when...
Well, that's vibrationally palpable as well, isn't it? It's like, I'm just going through the motions here, people!
Yeah, that's it.
And that is totally palpable.
Yeah.
So, one big tip, one big piece of advice, one big thing that actually has taken you from not existing 9 months ago.
Yeah.
She did exist, but the Magickal Creatrix didn't exist. To where you are today.
Do you know, for me, it is allowing myself to feel everything I'm doing.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing, because I'm not just doing stuff and checking it off a list any longer. I'm actually feeling what I'm doing. I'm checking in to see, right, what's the right vibe for things today? And I'm moving along, and I'm allowing... I guess like the owl thing is because I've had two card readings, and then an owl kept me awake all night outside my bedroom window. So I was like, right, I need to draw this bloody owl before I get another restless night's sleep. Since I started drawing the owl, I had 5 nights sleep last night, no owl. So I'm listening to signs and just going, I don't listen to signs very, very well still. So the universe has to really literally slap me around the face still, or stick an owl outside my window all night. Whatever form it takes, it's fine. So yeah, I'm a bit thick when it comes to signs from the universe, but we're all right with that. We get there eventually. Yeah. So it's kind of allowing yourself to be in that flow with it. Receive the information wherever it's from, take the action that's necessary, move on to the next thing. Who knew that was a thing?
Read Jenny's comment there.
Okay, don't bring out the true version of you. I swear it's magic. You don't notice it's happened. No idea how she does it. I have no idea how she does it, Jenny. Honestly, I really don't know, but I'm so thankful she does. Yeah, it is. It's a superpower.
I learned it.
Yeah, definitely. Oh yeah, it's definitely a magic origin. But yeah, she's able to see something, but you were able to see something in me that I couldn't see myself. And if I'd have been left to my own devices, I would probably never have seen it. And that would be such a shame. But that was all just because I had spent so much time trying to protect myself from ever being hurt, ever again.
So I then had to protect you from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So shall we talk spooky school for a minute?
Yes, please.
Tell me, you came in to Spooky School on the first intake.
Yeah.
We have the doors open now for the spring 2018 intake. And breaking news, I think that it's going to be the only intake of the year.
Oh, right, you need to get in. Brilliant.
The plans for the rest of the year may not have space for Spooky School across the rest of this year, which I know is a shame, but I really do want to help and support as many spiritual entrepreneurs as I can in the spring intake. And you get to take it again.
Yeah, it's great.
Which is exciting.
Yeah.
So tell me what makes that different?
It's different because everybody in there understands that fear of being vulnerable, the fear of sharing your spirituality, your creativity, that sort of thing. The bits that other business owners sometimes don't understand because they're like, oh, just get on with it, create a to-do list, and you know the stuff that I used to do. So, and it's not as simple as that, because sometimes there's a little bit of a more
it's about feeling your way
into
stuff.
It is, yeah. There's a different process, isn't there?
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And I think to be in an environment where everybody understands that is absolutely essential. So when I joined, I was only I didn't consider myself spiritual or creative at that point. I said to her a message and said, Emma, should I join Spooky School? She said, yes, I think you should. So it was kind of, I knew I needed to be in the right environment. So I was only focused. So I had somewhere I could focus on being spiritual, being spooky. Because the other groups I'm involved with, everybody else knew me as the productivity princess.
Yeah.
So I kind of needed that sanctuary, and that's what Spooky School really gave me. First time around, I was able to take the first steps and just take out the bits that I needed. When I'm going through the second time around, I've done my foundations. I'm going to be moving my business on in a different way, and I'm just going to keep sort of repeating that cycle with Spooky School, and that's what's absolutely valuable to me, because it transformed things very, very quickly. I grew as the Magickal Creatrix in a matter of months to the same level that it's taken me to do 4 years of VA and Productivity Princess.
Yeah.
So that's a big difference.
Yeah,
big
absolutely.
difference.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that the interesting thing there is you know, when you're in quite traditional business advice setups and things like that, you do feel like you're kind of pushed into doing things in a certain way. And I'm very much of the opinion that we feel our way into it. We find the system that works for us. We'll look at different systems and how, you know, we take strategy and look at and ask the question, what's my version of that? How would that work for me? What do we need to see from those observations? Yeah. And we'll be talking about really current observations, the stuff that we're seeing right now in the social environment, in the how people are behaving. And I think that that's what is really interesting as well, in that, you know, we're not talking about just strategy and a good red blog. You know, what does that mean?
Yeah.
How can we do that? What can that look like? How can we make sure that that's done in the best possible way for our spiritual business, for our spiritual self? So it's whether you've got a spiritual business or you're deeply spiritual. Because people say to me, you know, do I need to be a witch? Do I need to be this, that, and the other? And do you know what? Yeah, there's witches in there. There's magical artists in there. There is card readers in there. There's all sorts of spiritual businesses. But even if you're deeply spiritual and you want to bring yourself into your business, which is a bloody good idea, it works in that way as well.
Absolutely. And think about your audience. You know, if your audience are more on the woo-woo level, then knowing how to be around them because you're part of Spooky School is going to make a really big difference. Because if that's the type of people that you're talking to, then knowing how to function as a more spiritually minded business is going to make a really, really big difference. Because for me, I'm not so much... you know, yes, I do some card readings and bits and pieces like that, but the spiritual side of it is going to be more incorporated into the art side of it. But but it's essential that I have that path, because that gives me my guidance, that gives me my inspiration, that speeds up my creativity. So and I need, like I said before, I need to be surrounded by other business owners doing this, because it's what makes me tick, makes me run. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Do you remember the first time that you invested in your business? Because this is one that I know that it's another real big barrier for spiritual businesses, is that everybody thinks it's, you know, that you've just got this little hobby and that, you know, oh, well, she'll go and get a proper job eventually, and da-di-da-di-da. I remember being petrified of making my first investment in myself and my business. But if I hadn't made that investment, I wouldn't be sat here now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would have
I
would probably be back in the corporate world with heels on, doing my cases before a judge, because I'd have reverted back to my profession. What do you say about making an investment in your business, and how you can go through the mindset of making that investment?
Well, yeah, it's scary. Of course, it's scary. But my only regret about investing in my business is that I didn't do it sooner. That's got to be my only regret. It is scary. I have invested a few times over the years in different businesses where I've literally had to do my accounts all the way to the last penny of every single month because of the amount that I've sort of invested back into it. You try, as it comes out, it's going back in again, and vice versa. But it's absolutely always been worth it. And the other part to that investment is not just about the money. You've got to invest the time. And when you really, really want this, you will invest the time. And everyone goes at a different speed as well. And I think that's another thing. So a lot of people think, right, okay, what if I invest all this money and I can't keep up with anybody? Well, there's nobody to keep up with. It's not a race. I do listen. I listen a lot.
There's no such thing as...
Oh, there's no such thing as behind. Yes, I forgot that one for a moment. Yeah, no, well, there really isn't. And I proved it with Spooky School this time around. Is I only took the sections that I needed to work on this time around, because I was starting everything from brand spanking new, and the most important thing for me was to create a platform.
Get in the groove.
Yeah, so I could get in the groove, start getting some art out there. Because if I waited till all of that stuff was done first, I'd still not have drawn anything and started selling and realising that actually people did want it, and that was quite amazing. Yeah, who knew?
Mandy's saying something similar. She loved it the first time around, but feels that she's in a better place this time to grow and learn the lessons that I need, which is fantastic. Would anybody like to ask either me or Sarah anything before I go and kick her into the next phase of her business?
Exciting!
Anything at all you would like to ask either of us, whether it be around Spooky School, whether it be around what Sarah's doing right now, whether it be around her transition, whether it be around anything that I can help you with, whatever, pop it in. I've popped the link into Spooky School. I only ask that you go and have a look. I'm not going to go all big ass selling on you. Go and have a look. If it's for you, you'll know. Trust your gut. Trust your gut.
It's great. It's just a brilliant place to be. The group's fantastic, and I like the fact that I've got that little hub that when I'm having a bit of an emotional crisis or a spiritual meltdown, you've got people who get it.
Yeah.
So that makes a big difference, doesn't it?
How do you make time to create and do business? It's the same thing.
It is now.
Nikki Vickelson.
That's
what Maggie calls her. You're Sarah Cornforth,
yes,
and she's Nikki Vickelson. Nikki Vickelson, it's the same thing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, I've reduced what admin my business actually does now to the bare minimum. So there's very little that I need to actually sit and do business type stuff. So in that sense, it's a bit different. But what I do is I will, for creativity wise, I will set myself up whatever that project is going to be for the week. And I will do it when I feel inspired to do it during the course of the week. Sometimes that'll be the morning, sometimes the afternoon, sometimes the evening. Did you see that fluidity there?
How long have I been telling you have this fluid to-do list? And it like,
no, rigid to-do list. All done in the first 6 hours after waking.
Nikki Vickelson, you know that you need to put time aside to do your creative, because when you've got client work, it's slightly different.
Yes, it is, absolutely.
Because that always takes priority. Yeah. And I think that often what you need to do when you are being creative for others, and lots of us do this, so I do one-to-one work, Vicky does one-to-one work. When you're working with other people, that takes your creative energy, and they take your ideas on. That is where they take your ideas on, and that's totally cool.
Yeah.
And I think that when you're doing that, you also have to make sure that during the course of the week there is time for your own personal creativity. There is time for your creativity within your business, and you've got to get through your client work and have set times that are non-negotiable. non-negotiable times in your diary where that is going to be about your own stuff. And whether that is being creative, whether that is writing that newsletter, whether it's writing that blog, whatever it might be. But also share that creativity as content. Because then you don't feel as guilty about going off and being creative because you're creating content.
Exactly, that's it. I mean, that's what I'm doing during the course of the day when I'm creating something. And rather than giving myself too many set times, it's like, that's the project for the week, and I've got like a little stand that I put where I'm drawing at the time. So I'm being influenced by it. I gaze over to it, and I might think, right, okay, I'm just going to finish this particular bit of thing that I'm doing now, and I'm going to move on to that, and I'll juggle my day around because the inspiration comes to me. And I know that can be a bit difficult when you're feeling creative and you're itching to do it, but something else is there, and it's, you do have to kind of shuffle things around.
Sometimes you've got to embrace it. I wrote the Social Media with Soul book in 49 hours because it bit my arse and it said it needs writing, and actually I went to bed during that time as well. But it sometimes you've just got to go with it and have that opportunity to embrace it and do it rather than feeling that it's a slog. And you shouldn't feel guilty creating for yourself, Vicky, because it's great content. Great content for the stuff that you do. Where is Sarah? I have no idea. Becky, I have no idea.
Unrecognisable.
No idea. She even drank coffee this morning. How do you get more organised and a learning brain on?
Oh, well, I can't turn my learning brain off. I'm like a sponge, so it's kind of
child.
I literally am. So I'm always surrounded by something, and I literally, I'll pick a book up and read a chapter. I'll be carrying my phone around and just be sort of like looking at a blog or something like that. So it's kind of constant. I do have a need to be constantly stimulated, which sounds dreadful. But Dave. I know, poor Dave, honestly.
I think that initially, if you're not in that absorption mode, I think that I would initially say set time aside again. Set time aside to learn. Set time aside to fill up your cup with ideas and inspiration. And lots of people put it in on a Friday. Take Friday or Friday afternoon or Friday evening out in your diary and just spend a couple of hours, books, blogs, courses, whatever it might be, just feeding that. And I think that when you start to feed it, that's when you get to where you are. It becomes habitual, it wants to be fed more. And you notice more. I think that you become much more observant and see things, and therefore are inspired by things. I can't even go out on the dog walk without having a bleeping.
I'm taking photographs on my phone all the time, writing little notes down. And I think the big thing here as well, the big thing that I'm very aware of is, do not make time for learning, time for your own personal creativity, time for your spiritual development to be the thing that you do after everything else is done and you are drained and you are tired and it's the last thing at night and you're squeezing in an hour before bedtime. Would you do work for a client or work for a customer at that time of night? Well, you wouldn't. So why would you only leave yourself those moments where you're going to learn, when you're going to read, when you're going to absorb information, as being only the bit that you've got left when you're on the dregs of your energy? So balance it. Do something softer on the evening where you're just gazing through a magazine, getting bits of inspiration. But maybe the next morning, make the first couple of hours a reading time before you start your working day, and just alternate it around so you're getting the experience of using your different energy levels throughout the different parts of the day. Your creativity turns itself on and off at different parts of the day. We get the afternoon slumps and all of that. Sometimes the house might be quiet on a Saturday afternoon. Take advantage of that in a very different way. Don't be catching up on your work. Catch up on your spiritual, personal development instead. It's changing priorities, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's capturing inspiration. You say, I take lots of photos, I make lots of notes. I do that. I spend an awful lot of time, even just words, because I'm wordy, you're visual. But even, what we're going to do now?
We're going to do what?
A book plug.
No. I will never say it again. If it was going to get said wrong, it was going to be done by me.
Sometimes it's just words, lots and lots of words, and things that inspire you. And even like I shared that story of being with Carl earlier this week, and the word being better.
Yeah.
And whilst that feels very vague, there's so much that you can then pick around that. And I like to pick. You know, I like to pick at little sort of spiders off things, and you like to take imagery and capture the things that have got, oh, I like that shape, or I like that, the way that is in nature, and how can I bring that into my work? So, yeah, I think, you know, start to capture things, Elizabeth. Start to become a student of yourself so that you know when it's good for you to learn.
Yeah.
And just start experimenting with different times. And if it does take putting it out in the diary at first, that's completely cool as well.
Yeah, as with anything, creating a habit just requires you to actually set time for that habit first, and then eventually that becomes second nature.
Sarah will never be allowed to forget that. Never, ever, ever.
Never.
I'm never going to let that one go. In my previous jewellery business, I took time out to doodle new designs and make stuff, and needed that outlet to free space for client work. Yeah, and I think it's important. I think that, you know, we can't develop and evolve if we are stuck at the core phase.
Yeah.
You will never get the best results from your business, whatever that business might be, if you are constantly on.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that's so important.
Yeah, very much so.
Elizabeth says, yes, true, need to more motivated on my more personal stuff as well as doing stuff for others. Need to stop wasting my time. Yeah, it's an interesting one that's coming up a lot at the moment for people, is, you know, wasting time on social. And, you know, I think that there's big shifts happening at the moment on social and the way that people are using it. And I think that, you know, reclaiming dead time.
Yeah.
And, you know, that doesn't mean don't relax. That means have the choice as you sit down to relax as to whether that is the best thing for you to be doing with that time. Being conscious. A lot, you know, being more mindful of how you're spending your time will allow you naturally to make better decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You know, if you feel like you're wasting time, you know, just sort of, as you go through the course of the day and do this for like a week or so, or even do it for a month, just say, right, is this what I should be doing right now? Is this the right thing to be doing with my time? Yeah. Because usually when you ask yourself that question, it usually comes up because the answer is no.
Yeah.
You know, you don't ask yourself that question, is this the right thing to be doing because I'm working away beautifully here? Yeah. You know, that doesn't come up. Usually when your brain's going, is this the right thing to be doing? And you've got that little niggle, it's because actually, no, you're not. So start to listen to yourself and react to that as well. So, yeah, it just takes a little practice.
It really does. Yeah. It really does. Well, thank you, Mrs.
You're welcome.
You're in real life, so I don't have to just get rid of you off the phone. I'm taking her downstairs now for a telling off.
What a telling off? No. Be good.
No, we're doing soulful and spiritual strategy. Yeah. Soulful and spiritual strategy.
Exciting stuff
for the next hour. So I hope that you have an absolutely blessed Friday. Remember to go and see 4 Candles if you haven't already. They are waiting over there to be explained on in a little while. So we will be back with that later on. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Really enjoyed it.
If you want to play out with us, Spooky School's the place to be.
It is. Awesome.
Speak soon.
Bye for now.
Bye.